Hello, John.
No one.
Okay, so we got some very, very good news here today. According to the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development rankings, Ireland is the most productive country in the world. Now, that sounds very, very, very promising. Dr. Emma Howard, economist at the Technological University of Dublin, says Ireland is a unique example globally as the high concentration of multinational firms helps boost productivity figures. If you look at our labour productivity, it's 2.5 times the EU average, she says. If you break down into domestic labour productivity and the foreign sector productivity, there's big differences. So it looks very promising.
It is, and the item about that the BBC did about the country and its prosperity, it's a great miracle in some ways that Ireland come from where there was a lot of unemployment. As a matter of fact, years ago there was an unemployment candidate elected to Dáil Éireann. He was actually an unemployed candidate, and I helped him in his when I was young in his sending letters and all the rest of it. I think Sherwin was his name, but he was good, and he was an unemployed candidate. So it just shows you. And there was the Labour Exchange in Lower Gardner Street, and that was always fairly full. And I had to visit that myself from time to time when I was made redundant here and there, and so on. And you got pay related, so you got something. And there was always a queue and different counters for different people and whatever their occupation probably was had something to do with it. I was in administration and that kind of thing in sales. So it was there, but now that's closed. I passed it there the other day when I was going up Gardner Street, and Gardner Street was a very deprived street. We're talking about economics, and I just mentioned this as a very deprived street, and with tenements on the way up, and they were eventually closed. But now it's full of apartments, and it's a different street entirely compared to what it was. There's apartment blocks and hotels that are probably economical for these people that come, young people come from other countries and they want to try and save money. And so it's a different street altogether. That's an example of the change for the better.
It is indeed.
These apartments, I don't know whether people can own them, but they used to be full of tenements and they were in very poor shape after the British left. This is what they had, what had left us. You know, they didn't leave us much what I call pounds, shillings, and pence. As a matter of fact, I think we had to fork out 8 million when we got the ports back. They held on to 4 ports, including Waterford. But 1938, we got them back.
Very good. Very
And
good.
because otherwise we would have been attacked by the Germans if they were still under the control of the British. So they were prudent to do that. Anyways,
we might do a
I'm
video on
just
that in the future.
I'm just giving historical facts there. And with regard to the 2.5 times productivity, well, no, that's priceless. It's a great it's a great honor for the country to have that sort of ability. Considering we're an island nation, we're not attached to Europe. We have to export across the sea and all the rest of it, and we have this high productivity. And we have international companies in the health, in the pharmaceutical and health, and computer business located here. Some US commentators made out it was because of tax reasons that these ones are here. But if you're a country like what we are that had all this immigration, you've got to do things to try and attract people. But aside from that, one of the important things that happened was when President Hillary was Minister for Education, he made it nearly, he made it, I won't say mandatory, but he helped people and suggested that they get the secondary school education, which was available at not at a cost that is in other countries, and a good education, and so as they wouldn't be using the pick and shovel when they went abroad, but the education that they got. And then the fact that universities are well supported in this country, we have about 3 or 4, we have about 4 or 5 in universities, which is a great event. So we've all these educated people and speaking English. you go to the continent and they're speaking their own language and that. And France, you can sometimes they will speak English, and but you speak French to them as well. And Spain, they don't won't speak English as well. So companies are locating here because of our business of being in the EU and the educated workforce. That President Hillary, when he was Minister for Education, was instrumental in founding, and it had such benefits.
Did indeed. I remember, like, I mean, if you go back to the 1980s, so I would have left school in the 80s, okay? And I left school early and went back eventually. But anyway, but the thing is, if you go back to 1988, I think it was 1986, we had something like 17% unemployment. And I remember opening the Sunday World and what they were talking about, that Ireland would become a federal state. We were so poor. Ireland would become a federal state of America. And I was disgusted. I remember looking at that and thinking, oh my God, are things really that bad? 17% unemployment, probably the highest it was ever, you know. But then,
It was higher than that in my time, and I couldn't believe it because there was a lot of companies that now are no longer here. But obviously, they were replaced by a lot of pharmaceutical companies and healthcare companies and computer companies and various other Irish companies that expanded. The Lickey Kerry Co-op, for example,
yeah,
and other co-ops that have done great work. So there's a whole heap of in the food sector. Their exports are first class and they're guaranteed. There were some of our competitors not too far from here
mhm,
that put their snout in this country and were often trying to discredit, but they didn't succeed.
that's it.
We
But
have
I remember
exports market all over the world,
the
and
thing.
we have nearly full employment here, which is a great gift.
It is, but I mean, look, if you look at it, there was a series of events that happened in Ireland, okay, from say around 1986 onwards. First of all, the government invested, as you rightly said, in education, okay, and so I remember I was unemployed in 1990, okay, and I think it was it
Yeah,
was it was a Labour Fianna Fáil government. It was Dick Spring and Charles Haughey, okay, 1991, I think it was. Um, so what I
no,
don't.
no, that wasn't Charlie. It was, it was, it was probably, I think it was Albert Reynolds.
No, Albert
That
came
was with
in.
Dick Spring.
Albert came in shortly after for a very short time. So I think what you had was you Dick Spring, Charlie Haughey, and then Albert came in. And Albert had a short stint until about 1994, if I'm correct. And he said, remember his closing speech when he was resigning as Taoiseach, he said it was the little things that trip you up. But anyway, what I'm getting at there is that I approached the Taoiseach, who's Dick Spring at the time, a Kerryman, like myself, and I suggested to him, I said, listen, I'm unemployed, okay? Why can't I go to college and get my unemployment benefit? Okay? Isn't that why should I be at home doing nothing? Okay. And he says, Oliver, I can't do anything for you that's illegal. And I said, Dick Spring, I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. I'm actually asking you to change the legislation, okay, to make sure that every unemployed person in Ireland can go to school if they want. If they want to go to college, whatever they want to do, if they're unemployed for say so many months, they're 6 months unemployed, 12 months, that they can go along then and they can get a university education. He said to me, it's a very good idea. And he said to me, I'll try and see what I can do with the government. So he got onto the government, and within 2 or 3 years, they had things called post-leaving certificate courses for the unemployed, and people could go back as well and do their leaving cert if they were unemployed. Okay, so they invested heavily, heavily in education in the early 90s in Ireland. Okay, and I'm glad to be part of that. And the thing is, from then you had things like Riverdance put us on the world stage. U2 had already put us on the world stage in terms of artists and music and things. So there was quite a lot of things, and then the building boom. Then the tech companies, we done a video on that when we were saying that, like, Apple came in here in the late 70s, early 1980s, in Cork. But there was work to get them in. There was work behind the scenes even in the 60s, So it didn't happen overnight. There was a lot of work
No.
went into it, and I think we should really.
So the IDA, the Industrial Development,
Oh,
they
yes.
wonders.
I mean, the IDA were open to anything. there's the Independent Pizza Shop in Dorset Street in Dublin, and I remember, I think it was 1988. The IDA got behind a pizza shop to open it up to create employment, and that was great, and it's still there today. It didn't. I don't think it branched out into. Yeah, it's still there, and it was set up by two young lads, and but it's great. So there's all these things. The only thing I would say about Ireland's prosperity is that what has suffered, I think, is the arts, and I tell you why. Okay, the thing about unemployment and poverty is it creates great music. Okay, it creates a kind of, I don't know what it is. It creates an environment of artistic
Yeah,
creativity. Maybe people have more time on their hands, they're unemployed and stuff, you
right.
know. So music, I would say Irish music has suffered due to the prosperity of the nation. And as well, we've become a more secular nation, whereas back in the 80s and 70s, we were actually quite religious. And religion is great for creativity, obviously, you know. I remember Phil Lynott. This is a good thing, okay? We now have 92 nationalities in Ireland, so half the world is actually in Ireland, okay, which is a great natural resource in terms of languages, okay. But if you go back to say the 1980s, Phil Lynott said that they were asking him because he was a black man, he was the lead singer of Tin Lizzy, and he was saying the great thing about going down Grafton Street is I'm very unique. I'm the only black person, but you wouldn't see that now. You know, like a
No,
person from
no,
Africa
no.
or African origin was very, very rare in Dublin in the 80s.
Right.
And now you have 92 nationalities, you know, and we have a very prosperous country.
Which is good, and which is good, and but it would be a useful thing, I think, for the security of people in the country, that people coming into the country would undergo, as they do in other countries, security checks and all the rest of it, before that they're admitted, and that there would be a place that would be, I won't call it a detention centre, but some place that there would be under observation until such time as they're where they're supposed to have come from is verified, and that they haven't got a criminal record. Now that's the danger with the people that has come in. We're fortunate that we haven't had too much trouble, but we've had some trouble from people that had a criminal record and wherever they come from, and suddenly did something similar here. Then in due course, we won't go into that, like, but we'll talk about the benefits, and it's a benefit to have people with different experiences of life, and probably gaining here with our education system, which is very generous compared to other countries. They don't get that benefit in other countries that they get here. We
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
we taught English and all the rest of it in particular schools paid for by the state, so they're very well looked after, and I think that's they appreciate it. I would think. Uh, Funny enough, when the Christian TV early gets going, we'll hopefully the people that will be in it and running it will will interview some of them, and to see what it is that they what attracted them here and what their experiences have been. We've got a sort of we don't hear much of that, do we?
We don't. We don't.
No.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you very much, Oliver.